Hi everyone, welcome to episode 5 of All Things Quantum Touch with Shelly Liedtke and myself, Renée Morris. Join us today as we discuss the question, do I need to be intuitive to do quantum touch? Hi everyone, hi Shelly. Welcome to episode 5 of All Things Quantum Touch. Today we're going to be talking about quantum touch and intuition. So questions like, do I need to be intuitive to do this kind of work? Is it better to be intuitive doing quantum touch? Is it required to do quantum touch? So these are all important questions that some of you might be wondering about. And tonight we're going to have a little chat discussing these ideas and these questions. And I'm really happy to see you, Shelly, again. And I would love to hear your input first on this topic of intuition and quantum touch. Is it a prerequisite? Does it play a factor? Does it improve quantum touch? What has been your experience as a practitioner and an instructor as well on this topic?
Well, I really love this topic, and it plays an important part in quantum touch, but in the fact that, or not even the fact, I guess in the realization that all of us have intuitive abilities. Because we're here in physical form, all of us have our own way of being intuitive, but is it necessary to have a heightened level of intuition in order to do quantum touch? And I would say no, as long as you're doing the techniques and using them 100% of the time during your session that you're offering, you do not need to have a heightened sense of intuitive awareness in order to use quantum touch effectively at all.
Yeah,
I wouldn't shy away from it. Yeah, I wouldn't shy away from it at all.
I think people will be really happy to hear that, because I know when I first started learning quantum touch in my very first class, there was some other students, and there was one student who was really discouraged because it seemed that the rest of us taking the class all kind of had a natural intuition towards the work, and this student did not have that natural intuition at that time, and she was getting very discouraged. And the instructor made a point of saying, no, it's not an intuition dependent modality. It's you learn the techniques, and so long as you're doing the techniques, you're doing the work, regardless of whether you have intuition or not. So I think that was really reassuring for that student. And I would say for people in general, when it comes to this type of work, whether it be quantum touch and other energy healing modalities, people tend to think that you have to have these already developed natural capacities. And it's just not the case with quantum touch, So hopefully people don't get discouraged or shy away from it because they think, oh, I don't have those higher senses developed. I mean, we all do have them. They're not necessarily, immediately developed. And I would say probably through the work that some people, it awakens those senses. But in order to do quantum touch, you don't have to have that whatsoever. It's a modality that is based on very specific and learnable techniques. So you must find that in your classes as an instructor too, because you're a certified instructor, that sometimes some students will be more naturally intuitive, and probably other times there's students who don't have that. Do you find that affects their learning or their enthusiasm in any kind of way?
No, but occasionally, sometimes there's students that will feel frustrated if they're not, quote unquote, getting it right away. But then we pause, and so I can help determine where the difficulty or challenge is coming and help walk them through that so they can have greater clarity and have a good experience in the class. Of course, going over the fact that we don't need to have direct intuitive abilities in order to send quantum touch effectively. So that's the number one thing to recognize. It's not a blow to your self-esteem at all. So I would say just completely set that aside and chuck it in the garbage, because it doesn't have any bearing on your ability to send energy. As long as you're doing the techniques, you are sending energy, and trusting that as you apply the techniques, that something is happening, even though it might not be fully apparent. Even me, after having done this work for as long as I have, I still have occasions when I'm sending energy where there's this little voice in my head that says, is anything really happening? Because I'm not sensing anything, or whatever. And I'm like, well, I'm doing the technique, so something is happening. So trusting that, and holding that space, and yeah, so that would be
It's
my
funny. Yeah. Go ahead.
one thing I've noticed, Renee, is when you're talking about doing quantum touch, and I love this, how you've done it. I mean, I have intuitive hits in my own way come through, but I've always wondered how to say that so that others can understand in a I don't know, a transparent way, or a clear way, I guess. What can happen is, I love when you say that it's second sight. You have second sight, or what we could term as intuitive hits, or information, extra sensory information. The thing that's coming to me is, I'm sure you haven't seen this movie. Okay. So what is that? I think it's the Sixth Sense. And the little boy in there, he says, I see dead people. Well, anyway, that, information like that can come to you. So I'm wondering, would you be open to sharing like how you arrived at calling it second sight, and what are some intuitive things that can happen or have happened in sessions that you've had?
Sure. Yeah, I would love to talk about that. It's something that I do feel that I've had probably my whole life. I never had a word to call it or a term to call it that I felt really comfortable with, or I never recognized it for what it was. But it was a fascinating process, because when I started learning quantum touch, I was receiving this information. And so quantum touch kind of opened the door to allow me to develop this, what I call second sight. Well, actually, it's not an original term. It's a term that existed already to refer to extrasensory perception. And I just find it's a nice term that doesn't have a lot of the kind of baggage that some of the other terms, like say clairvoyant, and or even ESP, some of it has certain baggage that that wasn't resonating with me. So I really like the term second sight, because it's kind of just another way of seeing. And so I started receiving this information, and I expressed it in my first class, and much to the encouragement of my instructor, and also the other students as well. But what I found is, because how I receive this information is through, it's generally metaphor, storyline, images. It can be words and colors as well. Sometimes it varies, but that's in general. And I thought it was a little bit weird. And so I was hesitant. I shared it within the container of the class, but I was very hesitant to share it with my clients. And really, it's not part of the process of quantum touch. So it doesn't, whether or not the instructor receives this information or not, doesn't affect the impact of the process of quantum touch. So, but I did slowly start sharing it with, my mom and some of my practice clients who were friends of mine. And my abilities have increased tremendously, almost shockingly to myself, I would say, as I observe it in myself. And when I started offering that information as an option in my sessions, people just loved it. And at one point I was discussing with a colleague if I should offer it as part of the session and or as an option, optional add-on. And this colleague said, who had experienced my second sight feedback, she said, Renee, you'd really be doing yourself a disservice by not offering it. So I started offering it, and I realized, it's not just interesting information, but it's another way of presenting the kind of the energetic work that is being done that resonates differently when people, when they're receiving the quantum touch, they're in a very kind of passive state of receiving, which is wonderful in the way that it's supposed to be. The second sight just adds another layer of integration that is a little bit more mental, but also resonates emotionally with the clients. And often my clients, even though I don't always understand the second sight information that comes through, it resonates emotionally with the client. So I will have clients have emotional releases when I'm explaining the second sight feedback. So it's a very, very fascinating process. And quantum touch has really been the door that opened that ability in me. So I'm very, very grateful to quantum touch for that. And I see it as just the beginning of a really exciting journey of what I can offer to my clients as well in the session, the different types of sessions that will appeal. There's some clients who just want the straight quantum touch. They don't want to hear the second sight feedback, doesn't interest them, or that type of thing doesn't resonate with them. And there's other clients who it's an absolute must have for them. So in that sense, I have combined quantum touch with my intuition, and the beauty of that relationship is that quantum touch actually has allowed me to develop that skill in myself. So I would say for anybody who is intuitive, this could be really wonderful work for them to experience as a receiver, but also to take the classes as well, because they might have a really pleasant surprise in the development of their extra senses. So it can be combined, but like we said, just to do the quantum touch work itself, it's absolutely not required, does not affect the efficacy or the power of the work. So anybody can do it. You don't have to have any of those extra senses activated already. And it's funny, I was just, before we got on the call, I was reviewing this question is in the book that we've referred to before, the Richard Gordon's book, The Power to Heal. And he says the same thing, that intuition is not a prerequisite for being successful when you do quantum touch, and that some people have a natural kind of guidance system and where they should be working on a client, and other people don't, but all the more reason to just communicate with the client. And like he says, use the very low tech, the strategy of asking them where does it hurt? Yeah. So to follow the pain. So I thought that was great, because it really means that quantum touch is accessible to everybody. You don't have to have any kind of natural gifts or skills in order to do it. That's the beauty of it. I also remember, I don't know if I think that's somewhere in this same book, Richard talking about having fallen asleep, I think, during a session. Yeah. And that's
near the back of the book.
Okay.
Yeah, and one of those in the funny area, like.
And kind of feeling like, oh no, when he woke up, but the client, it was a wonderful session. The client absolutely found it to be a powerful session. And I don't know about you, but I've experienced, I don't think I've fallen asleep yet, but like you said, sometimes you have a session where it just, you're not feeling that intuition flowing. And so you can start to question yourself. And sometimes those sessions, I've had the strongest response afterwards from a client saying like, wow, that was amazing, or what did you do there? And so it's a fascinating process. And I'm sure that have you ever fallen asleep during a session?
Oh my
I've
goodness.
been close. I've been so, like, I would say even halfway, like in this a middle zone, but I don't think I've completely fallen asleep.
Um, I end up going deep into the field, so to speak, the quantum field. We're talking about quantum. So there have been a handful of times where I end up going so deeply that um, I will have a hard time knowing if I'm awake or asleep or whatever because I am sending
Mhm.
the energy. So I guess at a deeper level, um, it's kind of something that feels silly to admit to that maybe you fell asleep during a session as a practitioner, but it is nice to know. I'm grateful that Richard shared that story of him uh, getting so relaxed during the session he was offering because a practitioner, both the practitioner and the healer as the client, both receive the energy from the session. And so both of you can end up getting relaxed to the point where, yes, you could end up falling asleep. But what I found is the session always seems to end perfectly on time. And like if it's the whatever timed amount, talking about intuition, all of a sudden the energy will stop flowing and you look at the clock and you're like, oh my goodness, it's the end of the session. It's like the universe knocks on the door, knock, 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 and says, okay, it's done. And you're like, oh, wow. Uh, the timer ticked or sounded or whatever. And the session's finished. So it's very fascinating. Um, one thing
Yeah.
I do uh, really like is quantum touch helped validate what was happening to me in my life because I was having this second sight uh, experience from childhood, like from small childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Um, And so when I started playing with the energy, and at first it was the crystal energy, but then also connecting with the angelic realms. I knew they were there, um, those kinds of things. But when I connected with the Quantum Touch platform and the structure that it offers, the scientific background, the techniques, like you do this and this and this, and this happens. The energy is up and running if you do
Mhm.
this and this and this. And so it offered the structure that I was looking for. However, it helped further develop my intuitive abilities on top of, and I would say pay attention to them more because I was getting consistent results by following the directions and structure that was given. So
Yeah.
literally every session is different, uh, even though it might be the same individual that I'm sending energy to. It's like you're seeing a different movie every time, so to speak. And it's quite, I don't know if this is a good term, it can be entertaining because you're getting more information. You're being taught by spirit, is my experience, while you're sending the energy. Um, so I sometimes
Exactly.
receive the individual's guides like that. I see them as a pillar of light. I can see that there's a form in there in the field. I can actually see the client's uh, body or their spirit form um,
Mhm.
there in front of me. So I'm have it highlighted where to send the energy or where to focus and how to get the energy up and flowing and where for them. Maybe they've come with their saying my wrist is really hurting me, but then I'm shown through spirit guidance to send energy to their knee or their ankle or whatever, then I will continue sending to where they were coming for the session, the area of their body, in this case would be the wrist, as the example, but then also send energy to these other places where I'm being spiritually guided or intuitively guided. It's the same thing in my mind.
Mhm.
To send energy. Like you're saying, there could be tones, there could be colors, there could be oh, new ways of sending energy. Okay, so this is a really fun way to look at it. Like we have all these superhero movies that have come out, and different ways of them exhibiting their talents or their gifts. So sometimes you can bring that energy into a session.
Mhm.
Um, at one point, I was offering a session for a couple of teenagers. They were both, their mother was bringing them for me to send energy to, and they both enjoyed playing Minecraft, which I love playing Minecraft myself. So it was interesting. Minecraft elements would come into the sessions.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and then I was able to see, okay, they're breaking these blocks, and we would go along and go along, and it was like playing Minecraft game, and it would shift the energy. So using these elements that we have at our fingertips, they can be brought into the session and in a very playful way. Um, anyway, yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah. I really love that aspect of bringing the aspect of the second sight into a session. And I think I like the way that you described it. And to me, it's another way of putting it is that it creates kind of a multi-dimensional experience. And and to share, I share that feedback, well, for the clients who want it afterwards, and they just seem to, it always resonates, which I find is fascinating because it doesn't always make sense to me. In that case, if you were to start receiving these images, and if you didn't know that a person was into that, then it would be kind of strange. It might appear, so I try to not get involved, to try not to understand it during the session, just receive it, which can be a struggle too, because sometimes I say, well, that doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't matter what I think about it. And just to receive the information. So it can be a neat part of a session. And but as we said, quantum touch itself, you don't have to be intuitive. You might find that as you learn it, that you might awaken. I think because of the techniques and the breath work, it accesses these other parts of ourselves, these additional senses that we all do have, but that maybe aren't as developed in some as in others, or we just never even knew what to call it, or that it was even a thing to be called something. So I find it's really, really fascinating. But if people want to learn quantum touch, you don't have to have even an interest in those parts of yourself to learn it and to do it successfully. So I hope that the people who were concerned about that can rest easy and don't let it hold them back from taking a course if they want to. And is there anything else that you would like to add about our chat today about intuition and quantum touch before we wrap up?
The thing that's coming to my mind is it's really hard to not want these kinds of things to happen, because hearing about other people having experiences is kind of like when I do my bonus portion of my class with the spoon bending, many of the students who are really up in their head, like they have a tendency to overthink things or get super logical about the experience and really wanting to bend their spoon. They usually are the ones that end up not being able to bend their spoon during the bonus class time. And
Interesting.
they'll go and play with it. And quite often they'll, when they're relaxed in their own space, they'll be able to do that. But letting the energy flow, being relaxed about it, releasing attachment to outcome. Like, don't expect intuitive experiences to come. Sometimes I offer sessions and I don't get any of that kind of information. And then other times I'm offering a session and it's just loaded with that kind of information, and maybe even going into Akashic Records type of thing and clearing Akashic Records with quantum touch. So remaining open, and the longer you use quantum touch and use it on yourself in particular, because then you're connecting with your own body cosmos, your own body universe and intelligence, then the more you send energy to yourself, the more sensitive you'll become and start noticing information that comes through, like keeping track of your dreams, like keep a dream journal. Keep it by your bed. Let spirit know I'm ready to receive information intuitively. And then keep sending energy to yourself, like go to bed at night, sending energy. My favorite handhold for going to sleep at night is I put this hand here and the other one on my solar plexus chakra, and I will go to sleep sending energy to myself. So the more you do that, the more these intuitive abilities will start to awaken if you don't already have them awakening up. We are heading into the age of Aquarius. It is the time of awakening, and just let yourself know it'll happen at the exact correct time for you. Just set aside any pressure to try to access these abilities. Keep sending energy to yourself and let it awaken on its own. All of our whole chakra system is connected with our endocrine system. If you can find charts online or whatever, where every one of the chakras have a certain endocrine gland that's associated with it. The more you send energy to yourself, the more you'll awaken these abilities. And of course, we're here to encourage using quantum touch. There's lots of modalities out there to send energy, but we, Renee and I, we love using quantum touch because it's so simple, so straightforward. And the more you do it, it will awaken these abilities, especially because we as a society, even in the earth plane, the whole planet is here to wake up right now. So be open to that experience and let it happen in your own timing, your own divine timing for you as an individual. And just get curious about, oh, I wonder what awesome things can happen for me when I'm ready, and how spirit will show me that I'm ready. Like, I wonder what that'll be like. Like, keep an open awareness or open readiness. That's what I'm trying to say. Be ready when that will arrive, and celebrate it when it does. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great point about doing quantum touch on yourself. I have noticed that, I do it on myself on just about every day, and a lot of the times it's not just a few minutes here and there. It's a proper session on myself, and it is funny talking about falling asleep, because when I first started doing sessions on myself, I would go into kind of a deep trance-like state, but right after the session, I would have to go to sleep right away. And that seems to have kind of waned. I don't get that immediate, like, okay, I have to go to sleep. So I see that as a good thing. And that I'm healing, and I'm not kind of in that fight or flight all the time, where just the relief of being calm and sending the energy to myself just takes me right out. But I've noticed that when I started offering the second sight feedback in my sessions, I have a paper that I write down what I'm receiving as I go, and I think I would fill maybe half the page or something like that. And now often I not only fill the whole front of the page, but half to 3/4 of the back of the page. And that's not necessarily writing everything down. So it's like the floodgates have opened, and I know that that ability has developed in me. So I'm very excited about to see where it will go, and I receive, it's just a lot, the richness of the information has expanded as well, which I find is really, really exciting. So if a person, like you said, is interested in developing those qualities in themselves, then that could be another reason to explore quantum touch as well. And I, like you mentioned, you and I both love quantum touch. And I would say in particular, I think I already mentioned this, but the breath work aspect to me is really, really key in accessing those higher senses. And not all energy healing modalities offer that aspect. I'm not even sure what other ones do, but quantum touch has very specific techniques with regards to the breath work. So for me, that is really a key element in terms of developing the access to those extra senses. So I think we've covered a lot of really interesting, this is a topic that I'm really, really passionate about. I don't want people to feel discouraged. Well, one, if they're not interested in those parts of themselves, or if they don't think that they have them, then don't let that discourage you from doing quantum touch. You can absolutely learn 100% how to do quantum touch and be completely effective at it. But on the flip side, if you're a person who has those qualities and wants to explore them and develop them, then quantum touch could be a really powerful tool to do so. Any final thoughts before we hop off the call, Shelly?
No, I would say, even if you don't have, if you're one who doesn't have that intuitive connection at the conscious level, the more you send, this is what I found for my observation, the more you send energy, the more that door will open. It's like, okay, now you've learned the techniques, and it kind of opens the door, like getting your toe in the door, and it will just open wider and wider, kind of like Alice in Wonderland going through a door, you know. At first she thought the doorway was really small, and then lo and behold, it's, you know, really big, or whatever the situation she was in, it wasn't even what she thought it was. So this can be for you as well. If you're not connected with your intuitive abilities and you want to develop them, quantum touch is a possible path for opening that doorway, if that's your heart's desire to accomplish that. So anyway.
Excellent. I think this is a topic that we could talk a long time about. So maybe at some point we can revisit it, maybe do a part 2 where we go into more detail on certain aspects of for those people who are interested in developing that or have it already and think that quantum touch might be for them. So maybe that's something we can think about for future videos too. And as always, if anybody has any questions that they want us to discuss, then please put them in the comments below, and we would absolutely love to hear from people and to discuss any questions that our viewers have about quantum touch. And I think that's it for today, Shelly. So thank you so much. Always fun to chat with you, and we certainly don't lack words to share with each other. So great to see you again, and I'm looking forward to our next episode.
Yes, and we'll see everybody next time. So.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of All Things Quantum Touch. If you'd like to connect with us, simply follow the links in the description below. We'd love to hear from you. Join us again next week for another episode when we discuss the question, do you ever become drained when you do quantum touch sessions? Have a great week.